being here.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, we're just waiting for a few folks. I'm going to get started soon.
All right, welcome everyone. Welcome everybody as you're coming in. It's great to have you. Hey everybody. Welcome to our second call for South Asian Women for Harris. We're thrilled that you are here today. We know that all of you have very busy lives, and making time for this can be challenging. Um, and we also know we have 64 days to get this done. And 62, I was just corrected. We have that's 2 days less than I thought. 62 days to get this done. And we're going to get it done. We have some amazing women here with us today to talk about how we can plug in, start getting activated, and make the next 3 months really, really count. But before we do that, I like to start any gathering with a few deep breaths because we are running from a million places. So if you're sitting, great. If you're standing or walking, you can do this in any way, but just to bring us into the room, because we have to do things a little differently if we want to build something different. Oh, you're seeing the results of the poll, which is very exciting. Oh, they're not, just me. As you can see, this is done by a small but mighty, not professional team. So let's everybody just put your feet on the ground in any way that you can. Just gonna ask us to ground a little bit before we move into action. I'm gonna ask you to take a long, smooth inhale through your nostrils into your belly. Exhale. One more time. Inhale. See if you can bring your breath to any tension you might be feeling in your body. And then as you exhale, see if you can let some of that tension go. Last time on your inhale, see if you can bring your whole self to this call for whatever time you can be on it. And exhale. Thank you, everyone. You are going to hear from a really wonderful group of women, some of who are officially with the campaign, some of who have taken the initiative to volunteer themselves, and talk to you about what's going to be important to do in the coming weeks and how to plug in. There is a small but mighty group who is organizing this, and we welcome your presence and all of the gifts that you bring. So with that, I am going to let Anurima take it away.
Thank you so much, Manu. I want to welcome everyone. I'm glad that many of you have rejoined us from the first call. We had quite a lot of folks on and a lot of energy, and it's been rolling for the last couple of weeks. And I will be joining on different parts of the phone call, along with the other couple of us. And I just want to underscore, like, this is as community as it gets, because it's been a couple of us who've been doing this since the last call. There's not an organization behind it. It's really just doing what all of you have been doing around the country, which is trying to find ways in which we can harness the excitement and what's going on in local parts of the country, but also what's going on nationally. So with that, I'm going to actually turn it over to someone who's been just energizing the country. Ruhi Rustom is the national organizing director for the Harris campaign. When I say national organizing director, I mean for the whole thing, all right? And so it's pretty extraordinary to have Ruhi join us today. She's going to talk about a couple of different things, but like in large part to talk about the ways in which we can engage with the campaign, what's going on organizing wise, where should we spend some of our time, and also how do we have some of those tough conversations that I think we've all been having in the last couple of weeks. So Ruhi, I'm going to turn it over to you, and if you, I'll be here in case you need anything from me.
Wow, what kind words. Anurima, thank you for having me today. I'm so excited to talk to a room full of powerful women here on a Tuesday night. What a great, truly, no better way to spend a Tuesday evening than to do that. We're going to be rolling through, but I have so many things that I've been wanting to share, because obviously the race has changed so often. The last time I think I spoke on one of these calls, it was before convention. And then obviously, like, so much has happened with one of the most electric and exciting conventions to date, and so many incredible stories and speeches that folks gave. But I want to spend some time at the top to talk about the state of the race, which is evolving and continues to be just something. It is really the length right now we've been talking about. When I talk to some organizers, they're like, the length of time this election will kind of be like a special election. Like, that is how short this kind of period is. And so we got this really abbreviated timeline to introduce voters to Kamala Harris, to introduce voters to Tim Walz, to introduce voters to what a world and what a vision of a world under the leadership of the vice president as president would be. And we got to do all that while still getting out the vote. And so more and more, some folks who saw my colleague Nadia Belkin's presentation at the convention and at the DNCC have heard small bits of this. But one of the core messages we've started to hear more and more is that centering community is one of the biggest ways that we're going to win this year. So HPI voters were so critical in electing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in 2020. We continue to be the fastest growing voting bloc in the nation. And so it means that that community and my community, Bengali is my first language. I'm Bangladeshi, and I think a lot about my nieces who the idea that they could have a president who, in their words, looks like them, and they're like, we thought we would be doctors when we were children, and now they're 19 and 20, and thinking about very different kind of alternative careers and ways in which they can raise their voice, both on campuses, but also be a real force for justice in spaces, partially because of the strong leadership that they're able to see in the vice president's real presence and voice. And candidly, as vice president, Kamala Harris has just continued to champion our communities. And so the stakes of the race are continuing to get more and more clear. When we talk about Project 2025 to voters, we are making calls nightly to Nevadans, to Michiganders. There are folks knocking on doors, coming into battlegrounds to talk to canvassers, talk to voters. And by and large, people still don't know the stakes of this race. Project 2025 continues to be a surprise to voters. And as voters find more out about Project 2025, they do not like what they hear. By and large, when that connection and understanding of how this premeditated 900-page playbook of how Donald Trump and a bunch of his colleagues would roll back so many of our rights and fundamentally hurt the middle class to threaten our democracy becomes clear to voters, more and more do they understand and lean towards the fact that this actually isn't the vision of the future that I want for my children. It's not the vision of the future I want for my kids, versus Kamala Harris's opportunity economy continues to be something that resonates so deeply with our communities. You might be hearing our puppies in my background, and I apologize for that. This is an 8 p.m. puppy-friendly call that is disrupting us, so I apologize for a little bit of that background. But the thing about the opportunity economy that I find has resonated deeply, not just with South Asian American voters, but candidly across the voting bloc in battlegrounds and across battlegrounds with white voters, with Latino voters, with African American voters, is the fact that what is at stake for our communities is that folks have a fighting shot. And the fact that Kamala Harris will continue to fight for a fighting shot and deeply continue to fight for fundamental freedoms like living in communities safe from gun violence, where women are able to make their own healthcare decisions, where we're able to really stand up for fundamental rights and have so many of our families protected under those rights, is just a contrast that, again, the more we hear about Project 2025 and this 900-page playbook to take away our rights versus this hopeful vision of the future where folks have a shot and have an opportunity to change what their day-to-day looks like, change what their nieces, nephews, neighbors are able to really fight for themselves about, the more they are activated. So our strategy is very clear. Make the choice clear. More and more as this choice becomes apparent to people and folks realize that there's a general election and it's not any other general election that's at stake. This is one that's going to dictate the future of our democracy and how we're able to fight for a better world where, again, women and our kids have rights. More and more voters are like, I know exactly who I'm going to vote for. The persuasion does itself. And so we are reaching out to the winning coalition that delivered the 2020 election. We're reaching out to voters who maybe did not vote for Biden-Harris in 2020, but in 2022, when Dobbs happened, they're like, absolutely not. This is not a thing that I want my nieces and cousins and daughters to have to deal with, and voted Democrat in 2022. And then we're reaching out to undecided voters. Especially, I want to name that in the next month, a number of voter registration deadlines are coming up. It has never been more important to reach out to voters who are unregistered than in the next upcoming weeks, because those voter registration deadlines are just such an easy way for folks who have not raised their voices but are finally feeling fired up or realize the stakes of this election to raise their hands. So again, those are our supporters, folks who have become our supporters because of the horrifying things that the Supreme Court did in 2022 on women's reproductive rights and freedoms, and then undecided voters and voters who still, if they register to vote, will vote with us. And so we're reaching out to folks. We've made over 12 million calls since July 21st, which is incredible to battleground voters, but we have tens and tens and tens of millions more calls to make and more doors to knock. This is where you really come in. And so at the end of this, I'm going to make a couple asks. Anurima has the link. She's going to send them around. We got a debate coming up next week. It's going to be a really big debate. It's the first time that folks are going to be able to see Kamala Harris take on Donald Trump and really, really fight for not just our freedoms, but represent the hopeful opportunity future that she really is able to make come to life. And we'll be able to see Donald Trump be who he is and continue to fight for all of the oppressive values that will continue to make the Project 2025 world and the Ultra MAGA agenda real for our families. So the two things I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to say that now before I start going a little bit deeper into how we win, is host a debate watch party. That is so important. It has never been more important to show folks how much momentum and how excited people are around the vice president, especially to people in your life who are like, I actually don't vote, or like, I'm not a political person. Coming to a party to watch what's on CNN for 2 hours is a great opportunity for them to hear from, candidly, our best messenger, the vice president herself. And so make it fun, order food, make sure that you have a very collegial environment for folks to feel welcome, because our campaign is fundamentally also around joy. Like, the vice president is all around being a joyful warrior. Like, we are hopeful about the future we can fight for, but we are here to fight for it. And when we fight for things, we win. So the first ask is this debate party ask. And then the second is to host a phone bank. And that means opening up, again, your home after you do to a debate watch party and be like, hey, like, it's actually not, if you've never taken action before, it's not too late. You can come over, we can go rent a space in our local library or our local Y, and we can sit together and talk about what happened today, be in community with each other, but critically also talk to voters for 3 hours, and call all the voters we need to reach, because there are millions of voters we still need to reach, and there are only 9 Tuesdays left, I believe. I saw on a really terrifying slide when I signed on to the Zoom call, until Election Day. So less than on my hands. But those are the two things I'm going to ask for at the very, very end of this. The one thing I want to spend a tiny bit of time on is our conversation framework, which we call the empathetic bridge. And the reason for that is, for so many people, you are going to be the most effective messenger for folks who are bombarded with emails, texts. Put into the chat if you're on chat. I know the chat is going crazy right now. How many emails, texts, different alerts did you get just in the last 19 minutes? I'm looking at my phone. I've already missed 3 Signal messages. I have 5 Slacks. I have 7 emails just on my personal number. I am not even looking at my work number. That's 29 ways to try and get my attention in the last 19 minutes. And again, that's not to say that email is not effective. That's not to say that texts aren't effective. We have to use every opportunity we have to get to people. But I know last night when I was trying to carve through my inbox, I saw a ping. I looked at my phone, and it was obviously my father who cut through all of the noise that was on my phone, which means 1, he got a response within 2 hours. 2, I actually looked at the text message. And 3, I called him back within around 90 minutes, because if I don't, he's going to call me back and say, you alive. So we know that when you know people, you are the most effective to reach out to them and be heard, have a conversation, and be listened to. And so it has never been more important, yes, to call voters, yes, to invite people into your homes and really keep the enthusiasm going, but also to think about who are relationships and people you know who maybe you're like, I actually haven't talked about politics in a while with them, or I haven't talked about really what's on the line, but I think that if I did, they would come to this phone bank with me. Or better yet, they would definitely vote for Kamala Harris if I explained why. And so the 2 core parts to the empathetic bridge are, first, you ask how someone's feeling about the stakes of this election. You do ask with curiosity, with gentle probing questions, again, with a curious heart, as opposed to with what we like to call the how could you not vote for Kamala Harris? Which I love one of my younger cousins, but I fully saw her say to a barista in Ohio, which is where I normally live. And it really shut down the conversation fast. So if you were saying that to your uncle or to your grandmother or to your neighbor, it would really shut down the conversation fast and make it a lot less likely that you could talk to them again. And so the first step to this framework, again, is to ask, what's on the line for you? How are you thinking about this election? What really matters to you? And start to probe around like whatever that feeling or whatever that experience is. When they share, the second fastest way to have folks shut down is to not acknowledge how they feel. And so start with, I hear that, I see it, like share more where that comes from you, or like what experience kind of shaped that. I just want to know. I'm so like, I truly, truly deeply want to know. Something that I think about a lot is the way that I talk to my partner or the way that I talk to my best friend isn't necessarily the same empathy that I often would use with myself or someone who you're a little bit harsher to. And so thinking through with true curiosity, asking and acknowledging what people feel is the first step to some of these persuasion, really tough conversations, especially the closer they are to your family and the closer they are to your networks. The second part of this is we get a lot of questions around the best talking points. And I spent, I think, like 6 minutes at the top talking about the stakes of this race, talking about Project 2025. I could probably get all of you in 6 to 10 minutes, an abbreviated version of our best talking points. But we know that our absolute best talking points are your personal stories. And so when you're sharing and really, really being present for the concerns that others raise, I think a lot about the fact that a lot of our, honestly, like my family members, I won't speak for everyone, but some of my family members might be not Democrats or might not necessarily have voted for a Democrat in the past. But when they hear a little bit about the fact that when Kamala Harris talks about how she's the oldest daughter and she knows what it felt like to be the oldest child and see her 5-foot-tall mom speak with an accent and how folks were treated, I feel deeply what it felt like to not know English until I was 12 years old, and the moments in which like I had real challenges on the playground and how hard it was to have teachers understand where I came from and what I valued and how I experienced the world. And the fact that the fact that our vice president understands and deeply sees that about me makes me believe that when she says that she cares about an opportunity economy where everyone has a fair shot, she means it and that she's going to fight for it. And that connection, and then leading to obviously all of the things that I think candidly Trump's Project 2025 will take away from me and my family and my sisters and my cousins, that is so much more effective than giving someone a one-pager on all of the fact sheets and things that candidly could feel very much like giving them a news article that they may read or may not read. There's no way that someone can, one, like argue with or dismiss your authentic story. And it candidly, if they are related to you or care about you, is going to hit so much more meaningfully in a way that will actually maybe make them reconsider their opinion and actually be able to engage in the future, which leads to my concluding thought. The empathetic bridge is only effective if the bridge stands. So the last way to wrap up these conversations is to offer folks a choice. Ask, hey, like, I would love to know if you would support us if they seem like they've been moved. If they don't seem like they've been moved, like, I would love to talk about this again. Like, could we chat next week or in 2 weeks? Or like, could we grab a drink in 3 days and talk about like what's coming up for you? I would love to circle back again. And then if folks actually were moved and they're like, actually, like, yeah, I am supportive, I'd love to learn more, ask them to join us. We need every volunteer, every single person to make calls, knock doors, and reach out to people they know. The thing about the empathetic bridge is that, one, because it's your story, no one can do it for you with your connections. You have the unique power to really, really move hearts and minds in a way that cannot be replaced and needs to be layered in with all the other door knocks and all of the other phone calls we're going to make, all of the other ads that they're going to see. And then the really, really special thing is that, candidly, again, we're calling voters tonight. We're calling Michiganders tonight. We're calling Arizonans after it hits 9 p.m. And that's amazing. It's really incredible. However, it is so much more impactful when an Arizonan gets a call from me, stranger Ruhi living in Wilmington, Delaware, but then also their cousin who they like might have picked up immediately, just like how I picked up my dad's call, speaks to them and shares their story, because it means when another volunteer calls them tomorrow, that will be their third touch, their third conversation from 3 different voices who have shared why this election matters to them. And one of them will be someone who might likely follow up, and there's more likelihood of them having a relationship with. So you have so much power to make calls, to reach out to people you know, and have those conversations now, especially because it's September 8th. On October 20th, you're not going to be able to follow up, or you can't say, can I please call you every minute of every day for the next 20 days until election day happens. It is much weirder to do that versus it's September 8th. Think about who you need to reach out to, share your story and share what's on the line for you, and invite into the dialogue now, such that in 2 weeks, when voter registration deadlines hit, you can have a follow-up to say, I know we started talking about choice and why that really matters to me, and you start to think about why the economy and some of the costs, especially around gas, are really holding you back. The voter registration deadline's hitting in North Carolina. What are you thinking about, and what questions can I answer? How can I support you? And so there's never been a more important time to start those conversations. I have gone way over my time limit, so I'm going to pause here and hold for the chat, which I think is blowing up. But Anurima is going to send around the 2 big links that we have after this. First, again, host a debate watch party, especially for folks who are apolitical, folks who actually might be Democrats excited about Kamala Harris, but they maybe haven't raised their hands to talk to voters or do anything and volunteer with us. Invite them to do something and come to a fun debate watch party at your home or in a space that is in your community, to come and invite them to join our campaign of Joyful Warriors, and then ask them to make calls, because we absolutely need to talk to so many voters who you can start with in your own community, but also need to continue calling through all the people we don't know to make sure that we reach everyone as many times as we need to win big this fall, because we are going to win, and we're going to win because of you. So thank you so much for everything you do. And Anurima, back to you.
Thank you, Ruhi. Thank you for the bridges, the empathetic ones, the ones that are bringing us all together. And thank you so much for all the work you've been doing. We are so deeply grateful to be able to follow your lead, and we will absolutely send things around. And I know as you have more anything else to share, we will absolutely get it to everyone here. So thank you for joining us. I know you have lots on your plate. There's been like multiple phone banks, by the way, tonight, that people who have already led who are on this call, and they're just joining us, and you could not have had a more extraordinary bridge to the next speaker, who is going to talk. It's not empathetic bridges, it's compassionate curiosity. So it's super fun to have different ways in which we can think about the stories we're telling and how we're bringing people together. So thank you. Susmik, I'm going to bring you back onto the screen with me, and then do a quick intro, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. Just so as we start, I'm going to put a question in the chat about that I think we would just want to be able to share to get some sense of the kinds of conversations people will be having around the country. But let me just do a quick introduction. Susmik is a new friend, but someone who I think I've been on calls before, and now many years ago, because we are part of something called People's Action in the Family that has been around it. And People's Action for me has been a place that I went into super nervous, because we were trying to talk to people who may not actually agree in different ways, and to try and really build some of those empathetic bridges. And I feel like I learned so much over the years by practicing with you, and it's so great. I'm so grateful to have you on to share some of the ways in which you've been literally creating joyful warrior communities all over the country to be able to do this work. And so a lead organizer of People's Action, of the work of Deep Canvassing, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you so much, Anurima. And hello, everyone. My name is Susmik. I'm a movement politics field manager with People's Action, but I feel like 2 of my organizing worlds, have collided in this call, because I also see Neha, who's a co-director for South Asian for America, and I've been a New Hampshire organizing chair for SAFA for almost 3 years now. And so I'm like truly excited to be here today with fellow Asian women and allies. But also Ruhi, you were like, I was just like, oh my gosh, Ruhi's teaching a compassion and curiosity here for folks. But in addition to People's Action, I want to quickly share a little bit about myself. I moved to the United States at the age of 16 from Nepal, and I am now a naturalized citizen here. And so with the upcoming election, I feel like there's a lot at stake, especially like issues like, with Project 2025 directly attacking immigrants like me, right? And as a woman of color and South Asian and an API individual, the threats to reproductive rights, the ongoing wars and genocides that impact and the impacts of white supremacy that resonates deeply within not just here in the United States, but across the world. And so I want to quickly ask you all a question. How many of you have found yourself in arguments with family members, people in your community, both in your personal and public circle, whereby at the end of the conversation, you felt more distance than close? If you felt that way, put a plus in the chat. And I see a lot of folks have reactions. I see a hand raise. Right. Maybe Anju and July, right? And a lot of pluses in the chat. So like, I know, in addition to like organizing in multiple different issues, one of the things that I've been focusing on organizing is talking to voters who are conflicted. This year we'll be talking to voters in the key battleground states with People's Action and our affiliates, but and also within the South Asian community, API communities. We've been using this technique called deep canvassing, and I'm also gonna quickly share my screen. Yeah. And so basically, deep canvassing is a persuasion methodology that we have been using to have a meaningful conversations with people who are conflicted, but also I've used this technique to have conversation with people in my personal life, with my uncle and aunties, in Nepali community, in South Asian API communities, and beyond. So deep canvassing is a powerful conversation methodology that uses compassion, curiosity, like Ruhi was mentioning, the empathetic bridge, right? And also deep listening. So it's like about creating a really non-judgmental space for people to share their stories, their values, and their lived experiences. And by doing so, we're not just like sharing facts or statistics, but we're also making a deep human emotional connection with the person that we're talking to. And what we have seen is that there has been research that has been done, and it's been some of those research are decade long. And what the research have showed is that deep canvassing is highly effective conversation because it taps into people's emotions, especially during election cycle, right? A lot of people are making decisions on who they're going to vote for based on their emotions. And so what it does is that it really helps people understand their cognitive dissonance, their conflicted feelings where their values do not necessarily match their actions. And so what we do is that, like, to change the hearts and minds of people, you create this non-judgmental space where people are actually unpacking and processing their lived experiences. And it has been particularly powerful in talking to people across divisions, whether it's a political divisions or ideological, but that is where it's been very impactful. And one of the reasons that the deep canvassing work is because of compassion and curiosity. And like Ruhi was mentioning earlier, where it's not just about facts and stats, but you're getting down to what matters to you. What do you care about? What is your story? And what does, like, when you say immigration matters to me, what do you mean by that? How does it show up in your day-to-day lives? And how does it impact you or people that you love or people that you care about? But I do want to acknowledge that these conversations are not easy. right? How many times when you're asking some deep conversation and people have told you like, oh my gosh, you're being so newsy. You're being so prying, right? Because like a lot of the times people don't want us to have these conversations. And it's such a countercultural thing to do where you're like, you know what? I am genuinely interested in your story. And I'm actively listening. Like this is not normal for folks. But the thing is, there is a lot at stake for us to not have these conversations with the people that we love, with people we know and people we don't know. But going back to the challenge that these conversations are hard. These conversations are challenging, and these conversations are it requires a lot of emotional labor. And I have also personally struggled, talking to people, especially like fellow Nepali community. That's where it hits me the most. Right, especially when we are not aligned on immigration issues with my own community. And these conversations could be emotionally charging. And so like, there's also times when if you're talking to your family members or close community members, they often know what button to push. So like, it does make it harder for you to have that open and non-judgmental conversations. But it is crucial that like when you create a space where the other person feel heard and expected, even if you don't agree with everything they say, you will still open up a space where you can have these conversations. Right. And you can start these conversations with a lot of like open-ended questions. The questions that I use are like, what are the most important issues confronting you and your loved ones this year or in the upcoming election, right? If you want to be super specific. The other ways to ask the same question is, when do you think about the future of our family, community, what concerns you the most? And I also have a worksheet that is going to be dropped in the chat for you all. And I'm gonna quickly share my screen what it looks like. So those are like two important questions that you can ask to just like very broad, open-ended for people to just like open up, right? And then the follow-up question that you can ask is, why is this issue important to you? And what has your experience been with the issue? When you ask that question, what it does is that it takes away all these policies and stat conversations about whether it's immigrations, economy, or climate, or healthcare, back to that person's story. So what we're trying to do is bring this conversation back to you and me, and how does it show up in our everyday life? And what has been super helpful for me once I do that is just like, oh my God, then what do I ask next? And when I first started deep canvassing, I was like, how do I know what question to ask? And so the most important thing is that once people share that, and if it's not clear, or the second follow-up thing you can say is, tell me more. Because people are oftentimes not going to share their whole life story or things that are important to them on the first time you ask the question. So you will have to do a little bit of a digging. So after you say, tell me more, try and paint a detailed picture of this person's story, lived experiences, or values. And the way that you can do that is by asking open-ended questions starting with when, where, who, what, and how. And the way I think about this is that unless I'm like super clear about where this person's coming, I keep asking that question, right? And after you have painted a detailed picture of where this person's coming from, what do they care about, you also then want to ask them a question about how did that feel? So oftentimes people might say immigration is important. Yeah. Arunima, you want to say something?
Sismik, I was just wondering, could you move the screen down so we could see the ways in which people can kind of create their own stories?
Yes.
because I think
Yes.
it'd be helpful. And then I think we have just a minute or two left.
Okay, I'm gonna finish quickly a cone of curiosity and then I'll go to the story section. Cool. So it's really important for you to get to the core of emotion of how does that experience made that person feel and why did that person feel that way, and not make assumptions for that person, because that's where people process their conflicted feelings, their lived experiences. And this is where you're providing opportunity for that person to process their lived experiences, right? And so like people might be like, hey, like I am for Project 2025, not understanding how it impacts healthcare and other issues that, that truly matters to them. Before you have these conversations, right? Before you are curious, it's important that you also be curious internally and in a very compassionate way, so that you can also have your own stories. And so like in the worksheets that we've shared, that is shared in the chat, you also have detailed guidelines on how you can work on being that compassionate, curious, and build your own story about what's important for you, what's your personal stake. And also, in oftentimes in this conversation, you've got to give people a hope that, their action, them coming together, them stepping up and showing up can make a difference. And so there's also a story that you can unpack and work on for especially making the change. Anurima, is there any way you could give me a time check in the chat for me? So please make sure that you're using these stories and worksheets as a guide to, one, have that conversation with people that you truly care about. And the second, for you to like build up your story in a way that will be really impactful, especially when you're having these meaningful conversations. The other key thing is that, yes, you need to show compassion and curiosity, but you also need to be very genuine about the story that you share. It does not have to be the most heartbreaking story that you've experienced, but it has to be a story that is true and authentic to yourself. And as long as it's authentic and you're being vulnerable, that will work, right? And I am gonna quickly stop sharing. But there's a worksheet, and I quickly want to mention that People's Action, we are calling into 4 battleground states in Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. In 2020 and in 2022, we made millions of phone calls and held thousands of deep canvas conversations that connected with people across divisions. So we usually mostly focus on people who are conflicted voters. And we've seen this work has made a huge dent and mark in getting the wins that we did in 2020. So we all know that this election is another critical elections. And so we are making calls every single day on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I am also, Anurima and others are also going to drop a link in the chat where you can sign up to make these calls. Every call will start with a training session. I know this was just a quick snippet of the hour-long or oftentimes 3-day-long training that we do on a deep canvassing. But there will be a training session that you can join. You'll be placed in a pod with the facilitators who can guide and support you. And so if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm curious about this compassion and curiosity, come learn. And come learn, make calls. And if you're like, you know what, our South Asian community needs this more, and I'm going to take the skill sets back to my community, do so. Right. And then like when you hop on this phone banks, connect with me so I can provide more support and resources for you all. And you'll also have time to practice the scripts before making these calls. So please sign up, and I'm excited to work with you all and excited to transform this world, save democracy, one deep canvassing at a time. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Anurima.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I know that there's so much to just to say to everyone on the call, like obviously we're all part of the same community, and as you just heard, right? And there's so many different ways in which to engage. But the thing that we've been hearing from people around the country, particularly in the last month, is how important what you are describing is. I mean, we are all trying to figure out how to build the empathetic bridge, how to engage in a way that that gets us out of the divides and the defensiveness. And I'm going to turn it over to to Venu for one moment to talk a little bit about deep canvassing. I will say that I think if people really have a chance to join People's Action, it is please do. It is and you'll get to spend some more time on this, and it's also not only important for this election season we're in, but for so much of the ways in which we're trying to engage in the world right now. Thank you
Sushmita,
so much for joining us. Just such a
Yeah.
pleasure.
thank you. And thank you for the work you do. I just want to speak for a second on one, the power of this work in certainly in not trying to change people's minds, but actually trying to expand your own mind and someone else's. So to co-create a space where you both may have felt a little uncomfortable before is really powerful, and it can be hard. So it's, as you're doing it, take care of yourself. If you just want to practice a little bit with it, that's okay. You can role play with a friend. You can also try it and then come back to your communities, whatever that is. It could be Post-March Salon, it could be your WhatsApp group, your Ride or Die friends, and say, I tried it. I had all these feelings. Um, I need a little support and I'm going to go try it again. Because I think, Shushmit, correct me if I'm wrong, but not only is this going to help us win, but right, it is also, I think you put up something that's going to help us heal ourselves, our communities. Oh, I'm tearing up. And our country. So it is worth trying. We ran through it so quickly because we don't want to keep you on too long, but please go to People's Action. Try this. It will bring you, I think, a peace of mind that we may not have had collectively before. Thank you, Shushmit.
Thank you so much, Sushmak. And thank you, Anurima. As you were describing what deep canvassing is, actually, let me just wait to make sure I'm on. Yeah. So as you were describing what deep canvassing is, I didn't have the words for it, but I realized that that's effectively what I've been attempting to do with friends across the spectrum, both those that are more conservative and those that are Democrats, but having a hard time really finding the same sort of kind of enthusiasm that I have and many of us have for our party's ticket right now. And so I think like the tools that you shared are extremely helpful. And I know that I'll be joining People's Action and hoping to get many women from Post-March Salon to join as well. So thank you for that. For everyone that's here, I just want to take 1 second to note that there are some amazing questions being asked, both in the chat and in the Q&A. Continue to ask them on the back end. Myself, Anurima, Venu, Mansi, we're all kind of routing who the right person is to answer. And we've got really strong people joining today's call that might be the best one. So we're just trying to route the right person to answer your questions. And we do hope to get to all of them today, but keep asking those questions. My name is Palak, and I'm very excited to introduce you all to two of the people that have been at the forefront of really mobilizing our community over the last number of years, and more specifically the last few weeks. First and foremost, today we're all sitting here 9 weeks out from Election Day. Many of us joined this call 6 weeks ago, the first South Asian Women for Harris call, and we heard for the first time why we're all excited about Kamala Harris and a few ways to get involved. We heard from both of these speakers that you see before you right now, Neha Devan and Sarah Shah, who started to tell us what they would be getting involved with. And at the start of this call, we had a poll asking how many of you have already kind of taken action, joining their numerous efforts to mobilize our communities on the ground via phone bank, text bank, canvassing, and etc. So first, let me just introduce Neha Dhawan. She is the co-national director of South Asians for Harris. She is a founder of South Asians for Harris, that was previously South Asians for Biden back in 2019, and also South Asians for Hillary back in 2016. So she is deeply committed to this work, to electing people that have shared values, and to fighting for those things, because frankly, it takes effort and getting people to get out the vote in order to make sure that we win. So let me start with Neha, and then Sarah, will have you follow up, who represents IA Impact and is the Senior Director of Strategic Communications and Partnerships with them. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Palak. And just a huge shout out to Palak, Mansi, Anurima, and Venu to kind of keep this momentum going and getting, women to organize and figuring out ways in which to have these conversations. So huge kudos to you. One quick thing to Ruhi's point. So my colleague, my good friend Sanjay Kumar, who's a great lawyer, many of you know, out of Georgia, who's leading South Asian for Harris's voter protection efforts. She actually gave me this at the DNC. So I hope you can see this as a picture of Kamala Harris. I showed this to my 2-year-old and I said, who does she look like? And she's like, mommy, and then I showed her somebody who was white because I wanted to, is she just saying this to everybody or no? And no, this was mommy. So then I said, okay, I went to my 5-year-old Mila and I said, okay, well, she's 5 years old. She knows a little bit better. And I said, who does she look like? And her response was mommy, right? So to Ruhi's point, in terms of what's at stake and what matters, representation matters. So some of the things that we are doing, and I actually wrote this down because I want to make sure we capture everything. We have weekly phone banks Monday through Thursday. So you can pick your day, whatever it is. Mondays, we're in Nevada, Tuesdays, North Carolina, Wednesdays, Georgia, Thursdays, Wisconsin. This weekend, we're actually canvassing into Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, Fulton County. And then we're going to be starting canvasses into New Hampshire, New Jersey, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and California shortly. Funny enough, I'm bringing Mila, my 5-year-old, with me to Pennsylvania. She thinks it's Transylvania because of all the cartoons that she's been seeing. So I think she'll be in for a rude awakening, but for 2 reasons. One, I think it's very important for her to know that this is what you need to be doing and getting civically engaged at a young age. Also, when I go and knock on those doors and say that, this is for my daughters and reproductive, freedom matters, it's like, well, she's right here. This is what her future looks like, right? So in terms of that relational aspect, and you're talking about some of the deep canvassing and those issues, I mean, this is kind of full circle there. We have youth team. We have 35 leads in 24 states. They're connecting with folks on campuses, doing voter registrations and other events, turning out the vote, coming and canvassing in these different parts, in different battleground states. We actually have a very robust rapid response team that puts out graphics with regard to Project 2025 and how that impacts our community. We have a group of voter protection lawyers that is headed up by Sanjay, who are compiling information about all of the voter protection efforts across the country, so we can kind of coordinate those efforts. We have translation teams. In fact, we're always looking for this. Back in the South Asians for Biden cycle, we had the voter guides translated into 9 different South Asian languages, so Pashto and all of these languages that you wouldn't necessarily think of, and we're always looking for help. So if you're able to help out in this space, please reach out to us. We're Linktree/SA for Harris. You can find a lot of different opportunities over there, ways in which to get involved. The other thing, what I'll also say is there's a lot of resources on our website. So what are your voter registration deadlines, your mail-in ballot, absentee ballot requests, so on and so forth. So please check us out. One of the other things is, if you can't canvass, phone bank. We're also actually going to be starting postcarding efforts next week as well. You can't phone bank, postcard. If you can't postcard, text. If you can't do that, make sure that you can talk to 5 other people and that they're registered to vote. And after that, make sure that those 5 people actually come out to vote, because it's not just enough that you're registered. And get those 5 people to tap into 5 people to 5 people, and the relational organizing piece that we thought was very effective last time. And this is just how you build a community, right? So I'll drop that in the chat, Linktree, SA for Harris, lots of different opportunities. We're doing some debate watch parties across the country too, and I think that's been mentioned here and also in the chat. Highly encourage you to do that as well. And let's just get out there and get as young, the younger the better. out there because this is their future at stake too. So thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. And I'll drop our information in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Neha, so much. That's fabulous. And before we just turn it over to you, Sarah, I was going to say, I often joke that women in WhatsApp are going to win this election. It's the shirt that I'm wearing now. You two have been posting incredible efforts on both of your WhatsApp groups. So I want to make sure you actually send out those as well in the chat so people can join, because that's just an easy way for people to see every week all the different efforts, both from IA Impact and from South Asians for Harris. And Sarah, if you could join.
Yeah, thank you, Palak. And Neha, I love how when you asked your 2-year-old and she said, "Mommy," I asked my kid, and now he knows Kamala, but he's also 2, Neha, and I have kids like exactly the same age. But then I asked my niece, and she was like, "Masi," but not talking about me. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. I don't look like the vice president. But I'm glad that your kids think you do. But hi, y'all. It's really good to be with you. I'm Sarah Shaw, the Senior Director of Strategic Communications and Partnerships with Impact. Recognize a lot of friendly faces on this call. And Palak, I don't know if you got the slides. There we go. All right. So what everyone has shared before, and I don't know if I see the slides. Is that just me? Oh, there we go. Okay, so giving some context to the numbers and why we are all here. So this year, as was the case in 2020, the path to victory runs through the South Asian American community. So in states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, where I live, I know Shruti does as well, and we'll speak about that. Michigan, Arizona, by our estimates, there are 400,000 eligible South Asian voters. So 400,000 voters just in these 5 states. And that population just from 2016 to 2020 increased by 51%. So that is right key to the Biden-Harris victory in 2020. Numbers are even higher this year. I mean, 235,000 South Asians have become naturalized citizens in the past 4 years. And in 2020, okay, we had about 236,000 South Asian voters in those states. Well, as I said, there are 400,000 eligible ones. So there's still a gap. There are still people that we need to register to vote. There are still people that we need to turn out the vote. And then as all of the speakers on this call have shared advice in terms of communicating, there are committed South Asian voters that we want to have meaningful conversations with and drive support for Harris Walz and Democrats up and down the ballot. So Indian American Impact, quick background here. We are a few different organizations, all dedicated to increasing the civic engagement and political power of South Asian Americans. So that's Democrats up and down the ballot. We do voter mobilization work and work closely at all levels of the ballot in the 50 states. Vice President Harris is actually part of our launch conversations in 2018. And so we've done a lot with her, and we're really excited to have her back now. Palak mentioned our WhatsApp group. I will put the link in the chat, or you can scan the QR code here. But what my message is to you all is that no matter who you are, where you are, what you do, there is a role for you to play in this campaign to elect the first South Asian president. So a lot of questions coming in about talking points. We're releasing fact sheets, graphics starting this week, and we are doing that with the community. So for example, today we had a call with healthcare experts, so physicians and public health experts, the South Asian leaders across the country, to help inform our healthcare content and what they're hearing on the ground. We'll be doing similar calls on other topics like abortion and reproductive rights. So if that is something that is of interest to you, please join the WhatsApp group, get involved. We have an artist ambassador program that we are launching officially next week. And so that is a way that we are having artists across the country leverage their platforms and talents and skills to bring people in that might not otherwise feel like there's a space for that. And we have a writers group that is writing letters to the editor and op-eds in local and national outfits. So all of that is a really long way of saying there is a role for you to play. Encourage you to join the WhatsApp group. We also have a website, theyseepresident.com, where you can learn more and sign up for any of these efforts. And if you go to the next slide, Just to talk about phone banks real quick. Again, this is all on theyseepresident.com. But similar to South Asians for Harris, we have ones each week going into the battleground states. And then our big thing that y'all are the first to hear these dates. If you go to the next slide, we already have regular canvases in North Carolina. So I just did one yesterday. It was incredible. And I think what we are seeing is that when it is right, our community knocking on South Asian voter doors, I mean, our contact rate, we are averaging 50%. That, for those of you that have never knocked on doors, is incredibly high. That means every other person is opening their door. And I think there is a lot of power in things like us being able to say their names correctly, and to have these conversations that our previous speakers mentioned. So we are canvassing regularly, launching in the other states soon. But our big days of action, so these are large scale canvases. We'll have some speakers and food. It'll be really fun. Training provided. So please invite your friends, family. We hope that there are a lot of first timers. These are the first 4 dates. So September 29th in North Carolina, October 5th, Georgia, the 13th, Michigan, and October 20th in Pennsylvania. We'll also be sharing a community partner form. So if you are part of an organization or a business or something that wants to join this alongside us, we welcome that as well. But I will drop some links in the chat. Again, I know that was really fast, trying to be cognizant of time, but there is a role for each of you to play, and we really hope, if you're not plugged in already, that you will join the efforts. And thanks so much for everything that everybody is doing here.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And a couple things. We are going to put a link to, in addition to all the links you've been getting from everyone, we're going to put a link to an action guide, and it has lots of ways to get involved. All of the ways in which you've heard about from South Asians for Harris, from Impact, from the campaign, from People's Action, will be in the action guide, and other ways in which you can actually find ways to get postcards and all the rest. And so want to shout that out. I'm going to do one quick thing, because I guess one of the things that we realize is, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Mobilize, but Mobilize is a place where everything comes together. It is a place where you can actually go find all the things that might be happening in your neighborhood. I'm going to share my screen in a moment and be able to show you how it works. So this is a sense of like how. Let me if I can actually. Actually, just let's do this. This is a Mobilize page, and on it there's lots of ways in which you can actually search through it. One of the ways you can search through it is to just go in and at the top, you could put in something like South Asians for Harris, and you will see what comes up, which is all of the kinds of things that you've been hearing about from everyone. The canvas in Georgia, the phone banks that are happening, and for Impact and many others. But let's go back up to the top. The other thing you can do, and we have to remove the filter, is just to basically say, like, it's Tuesday, and I really want to figure out what's going on in my neighborhood. And as you see here, this is a bunch of us are in Chicago. There's lots of things that might just be happening this week, and you can actually search through them and join. And so whatever you might be interested in, at the top it tells you like the different kinds of ways in which you can volunteer. So you can get out the vote and help people actually try and do voter registration, which, as Ruhi mentioned, so important in this moment. You can actually canvass and go door to door. There's phone banks. There's also ways in which you can sign up to do postcards and do postcard parties where you're actually writing postcards with people around the country. And so whatever you'd like to be able to do, this is kind of choose your own adventure. Lots of different wonderful ways in which to plug in. Most of the time when people ask me, like, what can I do in North Carolina? This is what I do. I go to Mobilize, I put North Carolina, and I say Saturday afternoon, and I try to share with them whatever it is that I found. So really want to encourage you to use this. We all use it. And the organizations themselves are really great about being able to, it's really easy for people to put up what events they're doing and what they're hosting on mobilize.us. And so this is kind of the place where everything comes together, choose your own adventure and have some fun with it. And one last thing, the great thing on Mobilize, if you signed up, you can actually send a link to your friends to sign up, and then you're all kind of joining in together. So it's a really easy way to do that too. With that, I will send it over, I believe, to Mansi.
I think it's to Venu.
To Venu.
I mean, you know, it's a collective effort. I am excited to talk with a multi-generational group of women. You know, I think everyone here has emphasized how important it is that we find people who are going to connect with the folks who we might not be able to touch or speak to, but my Thayaji might be able to, or my cousin might be able to, right? And it's our job to inspire them, give them the tools, and be there for them as they go out into this world of talking policy and politics and election, but really talking about people's why. So I would like to welcome Anila Nijwahan. Auntie, if you could start your video, that would be great. Also, Maya Patel and Jahnavi Rao, please. We sort of have the whole spectrum. Young Jahnavi, yeah. We're getting all of you gathered. Oh, look at this. So cool. So great to be with all of you. And really what we're looking to talk about is what has inspired you to engage across the spectrum. I think I'm closer to Auntie's side than I am to Jahnavi and Maya, but like what has inspired you? What's working with the communities that you're talking to? And let's just start by a quick, if you could quickly introduce yourselves and say how you've gotten involved and what it is you're doing in this campaign. And I know for some of you, you did a bunch in 2020 and you're now ready to ramp up your friends and your peers to get involved in this election. So I'm gonna start with Jahnavi and then we'll go around.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Venu. Thank you so much to Mansi Pollock and Anurima for putting this on. This is amazing. I'm so grateful to be here. My name is Jahnavi. I'm from outside of Philadelphia, near Bucks County, from Shasta County. And I am here in my personal capacity, but in a professional world, I am the president and founder of New Voters, which is a youth-led 501c3 that helps high school students around the country run voter registration drives. So that's totally nonpartisan, and we work in around 500 schools. But on the partisan side and on engaging young people to vote side, I actually in 2020 was deputy campaign manager on a state legislative race in Delaware County in Pennsylvania, and have had continued experience getting out young people to vote. And I think that the reason I got involved was because when I was 16, it was the 2016 election. And as a lot of you are familiar with, the suburbs of Philadelphia are a famously purple area. And I remember walking into school the day after and seeing my friends on both sides of the aisle just incredibly disheartened and upset, and talking to them and hearing, to folks who I thought would be happy with the results, and hearing that, this was the most talked about event of our entire lives. And it felt like we had absolutely no say. And then following up on that, I was talking to the people who were seniors, and we're posting these like long diatribes on Facebook about, the events of the election, and asking them if they had voted, and a lot of them hadn't. And I think my first reaction was, I would have done anything to be able to vote, and you didn't. That's so frustrating. But the second reaction was, you know, these people care about the country and the state of the world as much, if not more than I do, and they still didn't vote. So where is that disconnect? And that's what I've been trying to, you know, with people, wonderful people like Maya and other folks around the country, many on this call, I've been trying to figure out. And I think that when you're talking to young people, I find that there are a few, you know, really impactful tactics that I use as a young person to another young person, or, you know, when I'm talking with parents about talking to their kids. Like, so I remember when I was in high school, I cold called people's parents and I was like, hey, your son is not registered to vote. And then they would make their kid register to vote. So that is pretty effective. But second, I think that if there's someone who's more on the fence, I did see like comments in the chat about people who were worried about folks, young people specifically, not voting in this election. And I think that, you know, something we always say is like, there are more than enough people in this country who don't want you to vote. So why would you do what they want you to do by staying at home? And I find that that's pretty motivating to getting people to, you know, that rebellious, stick it to the man kind of attitude. But I don't want to take up too much time. I'd love to hear what Maya and Auntie have to say as well. But I'm super excited always to talk about strategies for getting our youngest voters out to the polls. I graduated from college last year, I guess 2 years ago at this point. But I know a lot of my friends are very excited to vote in this election. Not yet run.
And I
Hopefully
love
soon.
that too. They're excited to run. So, Genevieve, what I heard from you is what's working for young voters is calling their parents and making them register. And then it never ends. And then also using this idea of the establishment or the man doesn't want you to vote. They're trying to prevent you from voting. So why would you let them? Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you said it much more eloquently than I did. And I think that also just like, I don't want to negate, like young people care a lot. Like they care so much about what's going on right now. Like it's their future on the line. And I think that it's not a lack of caring that prevents them from voting. It's a lack of believing that the system will make a difference on the things that they care about. I think a lot of misinformation tactics actually target that, like target young people, specifically target young people's belief in our democracy functioning. So again, that is something to point out, like that is something that propaganda does do. However, it would be disingenuous to say that our government does work all the time. Exactly. That was how it is supposed to. If I said that, if I ever say that genuinely, either like pray and be grateful because the world is a utopia, or or like I've been Westworlded and I'm not myself. So I think that it's important to like be like, yeah, like the things aren't exactly how they should be. I think that there's a lot of things flawed in our governmental system, the two-party system, the electoral college, like all sorts of things. But we exist in the system that we do currently. And we want to get ourselves we want to be in a position where we're able to organize for the things that we care about. And there's a very clear person that you are able to do that in their government and a person that you're not. I also think that making things local, when someone's at the polls and, you know, if they're there to vote for their school board, they're going to vote for the other people on the ballot. Like they're usually just not going to skip over them. So if you can make people understand, like, your school board decides like how much funding your different programs have, or how much, like, you know, whether your government, like whether you can say the word gay in your school, like there are very like local day-to-day actions by the government. So yes, but I would love to hear also what Maya and Auntie have to say too.
Yeah, thank you. Maya, quick, please introduce how you and how you got into this world and sort of what you think resonates with the community that you're working with.
Absolutely. So happy to be here. Amazing to see so many familiar faces. Really wonderful that we're all gathered. And I'm Maya. I am currently DC based. I call DC home. I am, like Kamala Harris, the daughter of immigrants, as many of us on this call are and can relate to. My grandparents immigrated to the US in the late 50s, early 60s. My grandmother actually got on a cruise ship to marry her childhood sweetheart, and they got married at the local Y in Michigan. And it's because of their sacrifices and the fact that my Nana was able to live out an American dream and worked multiple jobs in his community to provide for his family back home in India and engage in his community, and eventually became a partner from being, a civil engineer, that I'm here today. And I'm here in a personal capacity, but as a board member for 18 by Vote, working closely with amazing people like Janvi. I'm super keen to see youth voters get more civically engaged. This is our time to really vote for issues that we believe in, to have value alignment, to engage in deep canvassing, and to come out so that we are representing our community. And one of those ways is to jump into a What I Vote For digital campaign. I'm going to pop a bunch of resources in the chat. You can donate, you can text, you can write letters, but you can also jump on social media because this is Gen Z, and that's the best place to engage them. Our What I Vote For campaign is so meaningful because we are looking at the issues that are most important to young voters, ranging from, as women, having bodily autonomy, to defending our democracy, to ensuring that we have protection and we have gun violence safety laws in place. So this is what we're fighting for. And as VP Harris said it best, when one South Asian woman wins, we all win. So let's fight, let's vote, let's activate our communities, and excited to see a lot of you on this call jump in and get involved. Handing it over to Auntie.
Auntie, you're like a celebrity.
My name is Anila Nijawan, and I'm really in my 70s. Thank you for having me. I've always volunteered in the community and wanted to get involved with the elections. I'm a Democrat and wanted to support the candidates. I'm also a grandma. I'm a dadi, and I wanted my grandkids to live in a safe and a supported country where they can have all the freedom they want. And my daughter encouraged me to consider phone banking. So I thought I will enjoy it, and I started, and I'm really enjoying it.
Auntie, when we talked before, you talked about, you mentioned that you were a strong Democrat. You also mentioned that when you were phone banking in 2020, you got a list of South Asian donors, and the fact that you speak Hindi and Punjabi actually mattered. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. In the beginning, when I was calling voters, all of them, any language I was calling. And then I started to call Hindi or Punjabi speaking voters. And they were very receptive to that. And so that kind of worked out good for me.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that some people, they were elderly and they just needed a little encouragement.
Right. They were not going to the voting booths. And then I would tell them now, they gave me a list of the precincts also, where each person would go to. So I would tell them, your precinct where you have to go is only about 2 miles away. So could you drive there, or could somebody take you there? And they did go. They did vote. So that worked out good. I'm talking about in 2020.
Yeah. And Auntie, you mentioned that you have big plans for 2024. Could you talk a little bit about who you've gathered and what you're planning for 2024?
Yes, I have a lot of friends who really want Kamala Harris and Tim Watts to win, and they're ready to go and do their part. and they're just looking for some information to come to their, to their end. I have about 20 of them. So give us the information and we'll go from there.
That's wonderful. And I think you said you have people who speak Marathi. You have people who
Yes,
speak
Bengali, Marathi, Punjabi, of course, Hindi, Gujarati. Yes, quite a few of them, different languages.
That's wonderful. I think Neha may catch up with you after.
Oh,
after
okay.
this. So we are almost out of time. I guess the one question I want to, maybe we can just leave it with, is if I run into someone who is like in the community that you're working with, what's the one thing to say to try and get them engaged?
Are you asking me?
Sure, Auntie, why don't you start?
Oh, so what are you concerned about? What is this election? What is it doing for you? So like she said, ask some open-ended questions, and those may help.
Thank you, Auntie.
Mhm.
Maya, what about you?
What do you vote for? As part of the What I Vote For campaign, there's so many different things that impact our day-to-day voters. Asking them, leading with empathy and having an open mind and having the ability to really listen and engage with them. If you're asking a question, hopefully you have the patience and the empathy to listen and engage with them with grace and with an open mind, and that fosters a very genuine dialogue.
Thank you, Maya. Genevieve.
Yeah, I think when I talk to young people, it's very much like the decisions being made today impact us and our generation more than anybody else, and you deserve to have a say on those decisions. So make your voice heard and keep going.
Thank you, women. You all inspire me. And I am going to hand it over to Mansi. We've got this, ladies.
I get to introduce you to several organizers from swing states. I think this is something we're excited to do and to share with the group that's here, because a lot of us are going to be making calls into swing states and we may not be in those swing states. So I'm just going to run through who the folks are as they show up. Angela is in Georgia right now, but is formerly, like earlier this year, lived in Pennsylvania. So she's going to be able to give us a little bit about both states. Natasha is also in Georgia, and I'm just gonna let me make sure everyone gets spotlighted. Rachna is in Michigan. I think Shruti's on here too, so let me make sure she gets pulled up. Is she? Yes. And Shruti is in North Carolina, and Jasmina is also in Georgia. Do I have Jasmina? Okay, do I have everybody? I think so. So because we are running a little bit long, I wanted to talk to each of you just a little bit on what you think is most effective in your states. I wanted to bring you forward to make sure folks know you're there on the ground. And since we're all going to be calling into your states, we want to make sure we're not saying something off-putting. We're not necessarily from Georgia or North Carolina or Michigan, but we want to make sure we are effective. So any tips in that way would be great too. So I'm just going to start with Angela. Angela, you're going to cover two. So you don't have to cover Georgia because we actually have others in Georgia. So maybe cover Pennsylvania and then we'll jump from there.
So since I'm not in Pennsylvania, and I'm not doing a lot of organizing there specifically, but I will point out that there's a lot of stuff that goes on in Philadelphia, and we should absolutely focus there because, as one of the other speakers said, it's pretty purple, and the swing voters, especially in the Philadelphia suburbs, make a huge difference. But we have to remember that, especially when we're talking about South Asians, we're across the state, and there's so many, and there's other neighborhoods. Pittsburgh is huge, and it went blue, very blue in 2020, and it can go that way again this year. And hopefully we can creep out into some of those outer suburbs. And so remember those other communities and the colleges that are in those communities when you're doing Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, all of them. And in 2 seconds, I'll tell you what South Asians for Harris is doing in Georgia. in the next coming week. We have a big rally coming up on Saturday, canvassing with down ballot voters, with down ballot candidates coming up throughout for the next couple of weeks, and phone making with the down ballot candidates, which is huge for us. Making the impact is having those people still be part of this local legislature, as well as having Harris Falls on top of the ticket. And just reminding people, our registration deadline is October 7th, which is so early. So we have to get people to get registered.
Thanks. And
Okay.
then I'll go to Jasmina and Natasha because you have Georgia too. So any tips for us? I know lots of us are mobilizing. South Asians for Harris has a call-in. iMpact has a call-in. What should we know? And any feel-good stories from the work you've already done would be great too.
You want to go, Natasha?
Sure.
Okay.
So maybe I'll just highlight a recent event that we had. Just last week, we held a postcard writing event and launched kind of what we were calling PMS Juniors. I think the first event where we had young girls involved and writing postcards. And I think it was just a really nice show. There's Anya, our little leader of PMS Juniors. It was just a great kind of assembly to showcase why a lot of us have gotten involved. I historically have not been involved in politics. I remember I was a Georgia voter for the Hillary election, and like many of us here, was very disappointed with the outcome of that race, and was a New Jersey voter for the last one, and being back in Georgia and getting just really excited about Kamala at the top of the ticket. Thought there's more that I can do. I have 2 young daughters now, and so that event was kind of like the initiation, I think, for a lot of enthusiasm across the community, across friend groups. And as we sat there writing the messages within the postcards, I think it drummed up a lot of good conversation on, do you write the personal thing, right? Some of the things that we've heard about today and why you want someone to go out and vote. Is it safer to stay somewhat neutral and just talk about why voices are important and speak to the folks that maybe aren't registered, that have been on the line, and think about what additional events we can now do to just get folks registered to vote, confirm that they're registered. So we can talk about or put in the chat some of the events that we have coming up, but we've been just starting to think more about leading up to October 7th and really focused on voter registration. How do we get out the importance of being registered to vote, and then follow up with those voters?
So our folks should reach out to their friends in Georgia and make sure they're registered to vote. At least that much, right? Okay.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just add a couple of sound bites. I think Natasha covered it all. I think we all know why we're doing this. Every time I look at Anya and the younger two, it's a reminder I'm not just fighting for this election, but I'm fighting for their future. One interesting fun fact is 5 weeks ago when, Natasha and I were asked to do this, I didn't know much about canvassing and postcard writing. And I didn't think, admittedly, I didn't think it was the most effective tool. And to Natasha's point, it was pretty amazing. Like, we wrote nearly 500 in a span of 2 hours with not that many of us. And I think just the messaging and having the kids participate and then sparking some of those conversations were so inspiring, but also at the same time, realizing that, okay, we did this, now we can easily do some phone banking. We can easily do text banking. We can easily try to, band with the other organizations in the community and do some of the canvassing. So we're all fairly green in this, haven't had as much experience, but in a very short time, we have mobilized quite a few activists across all nationalities. It's not just the South Asian community, but we've reached out to the Black communities, to the Hispanic communities. And in fact, our kids do go to an international school, and one of the newer ideas that has surfaced thanks to Anya is that she wants to do a video that goes viral representing different nationalities via language. And what does this election mean to them as the younger generation and their futures? So that's something that we're spearheading. So if anybody has any advice, any expertise, any skills with media, or just video editing, please do let us know. And it's something that we can potentially partner. Another great outcome of all of this is I've met some incredible women like Angela, Lovely Dylan, Sanjui. I mean, in the span of 5 weeks, I'm texting and calling them, just saying, look, I need advice. I don't really know how to do this, but I want to fundraise. let's talk about how the down ballot's important. And Anurima gave me a call 5 weeks ago and said, you can do this. And this is why the down ballots are important. And in a few short weeks, we want to host a fundraiser for Ashwin, who's running for Georgia State Senate. And again, like a lot of energy around it and excitement. So this goes back to, this campaign is about joy. Another fun fact is that I've been, deliberately taking Ubers locally just to connect with folks. I also don't like the fact that it also helps me not parking in places. But it's been enlightening to have these conversations, specifically to non-South Asian community members about what they feel about the election, and that the whole concept of the empathy bridge really resonated, because it's actually quite difficult to have those conversations. So it took some practice to say, okay, well, why do you feel that way? Like, let's talk about some of the issues. And sometimes it's education, sometimes it's, just a perception based on history. So I think that's been really great. I know that's not necessarily a traditional tool, but maybe we try it. We sit in Ubers, we have those conversations, and we spread the word of the importance of voting and why this election and why now.
I love it. You're going to use the Uber ride to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I'm even getting their numbers to text them, so going a little far.
I guess there's lots of opportunities. Don't forget your Uber ride. Shruti, I'll jump to you for North Carolina. I know we have a lot of these efforts that are calling into North Carolina too. So anything that you can share would be great.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm here in a personal capacity as well, but my professional life, I work with North Carolina Asian Americans Together and in Action, and our sister organization, North Carolina Asian Americans Together. I just want to lift up the importance of doing Pan-Asian work. In North Carolina, the Asian population is about 4% of the total voting population. And so, the South Asian community, while it's the largest, we can't make that difference on our own. So we have to reach out to our other Asian brothers and sisters, and also to our BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. And together our voices are so much stronger. I just want to say that, this call is all of my worlds coming together. I've got people from Michigan that I've known for 30, 40 years. I've got students of mine from my dance school. And I've got an auntie who actually taught me about the importance of community when I was younger. So, I just love the fact that we're all in this together. I'm doing this. My professional life before NCAT, I was in the IT world. But in 2016, I realized I needed to do something different for my children. I have 2 daughters, and I actually have a son who's LGBTQ+. And so I do this for them to make sure that North Carolina is staying safe, inclusive, and has opportunities for everybody. So having said that, I also want to say, hey, we've also got down ballot races that are really important. And while we're out there, making sure that the president, the presidential election is secured, we also want to make sure that our down ballot races are strong. The state houses and legislatures, Senate races are so important. Even in a state like North Carolina, which is gerrymandered to the hilt, we can still prevent supermajorities from happening, and so making sure that bad bills don't get passed. In our organization, we have canvassing opportunities. We're going to be doing community canvas days. We work in 10 different counties in North Carolina, and 2 I can lift up are September 14th in Mecklenburg County, which is the Charlotte area, and then October 26th in the Raleigh area. And so if you want to travel to North Carolina, we'd love to host you. We're expecting some pretty big events. We do weekly phone banking opportunities. You can definitely join our team and call. And we do different, we've endorsed candidates on our C4 side. And so definitely we'll be calling about those down ballot races as well as the presidential race. And another big project I wanted to uplift, and I'll hand my time over, is we do something called Empower You, where we're working to make sure that youth on 12 college campuses and numerous high school campuses are getting out to vote. And we work not just with Asian Americans, but we work with HBCU campuses as well, because we recognize the importance. And one thing that The reason why we chose to do this is we were able to turn out Asian youth 3 points higher than the state population, the general population of youth back in 2022. And so we know that we've got the strategy and the tactics to be able to do this significantly and impactfully. So please, we're going to drop some links. Please do call in with us, come and visit us. And North Carolina is a great place, and want to make sure that it continues to be a great place for all of us. Thank you so much.
And Shruti, all of those things are also on Mobilize, I assume, right? So if we go in and are they, I hope.
Not yet. We actually don't
Okay.
use Mobilize, but I'm going to talk to my volunteer coordinator and make sure that we are on Mobilize. So look for that in the next couple of days.
Thank you. All right, and then Rachna from Michigan. I would love to hear what's going on in Michigan, and I'm sure everyone here would like to know too.
So first, just thanks for allowing me to even speak to this esteemed group of people who are here and hanging out with us late, especially those of you who have kids. I am a Michigan transplant, so part of my insights and kind of focus is really kind of thinking about this as somebody who didn't live in a swing state for a long time and was really frustrated by the fact that my efforts were diluted, and now I finally have a chance to make a difference. I'm here in a professional capacity. I don't work in any capacity in politics. I'm involved in the city council just for sustainability reasons. But as far as the things that I can add to the conversation, because much of what's happening in Michigan is very similar to what has been described across the board. The two kind of pockets of populations that are going to make a difference in Michigan are the youth vote, which we've talked extensively about already, but is very prominent in particular outside of the concentrated areas as you kind of look up the state. The percentage of registered and active voters that are between 18 and 29 is very small. So there's a huge opportunity to mobilize kind of the rest of the state, the youth vote. And then the second population, which again, I think we've talked about, is the auntie kind of segment. I think it's been said before in these calls, but I would say like the Michigan aunties and uncles probably were a big part of what happened in 2016, and we need to make sure that doesn't happen again. So the two places where we are spending a lot of time on the youth engagement side, it's around voter registration. I think a lot of the efforts that were described on the call earlier are being implemented or will be implemented on college campuses, U of M, MSU in particular, because that is where you have a concentration of youth voters that are most likely from the state. And oftentimes those messages get translated back to their parents. And then the second is that kind of my parents' generation, your parents' generation. What I've discovered just from initial conversations is there's always an anchor who's willing to have a conversation, and that person is going to bring in the rest. And so we're really focused on identifying those anchors who are willing to bring in their friends who are not afraid to have the conversation. The other effort that I think I see a lot of activity here and has been mentioned is postcard writing. I cannot stress how effortless and impactful that is. If you have not signed up for a list, please do so. I received a postcard. I don't know who Rama is who sent me the postcard, but if you're on this call, thank you. It was like such a breath of fresh air. Everybody in my family read it. So we're really focused on postcard writing, mostly because it is something that is high impact, doesn't require somebody to answer the door, answer a phone call, answer a text, and it feels much more personal than I think a lot of the other efforts that are hard for many people to participate in. So that's the quick and dirty of what's happening in Michigan.
Yeah, thank you, Rachna. I think that's really, really helpful. I hope everyone here is more excited now, just because I think all of our efforts are working, and that's what we're hearing. So I hope that everyone will continue in those efforts. And I am going to go to Palak next so that we can sort of go through some of the poll info and then keep moving along.
Hi, everyone. Hi, sorry about that. I want to acknowledge a couple things. First and foremost, I just want to give like a huge shout out to everyone that just spoke. These are women that have been organizing either in their day jobs, full-time, or really have started in the last few weeks. I'm particularly happy and grateful for the ones that were kind of like sheepish to raise their hands, even though they are either new to a state that really does matter in this election, or just didn't, have joined these types of calls in the past as someone that wanted to take in the information but never saw themselves as a lifetime voters, but never saw themselves as a mobilizer in their community. And in just 6 short weeks, I'm seeing, whether it's just Mina or Natasha or Rachna, just hearing them talk about like all the things that they can do in addition to the list that we've sent them, and prioritizing them for being most effective and things like that, which just speaks to all of us as women being busy with our lives. I want to acknowledge one thing, which is that there have been a few questions in the chat, and I want to be mindful of the fact that like we think that it's a very important topic, and then many of us are probably having the same conversations with friends and family members of ours around the war that's happening right now, the genocide that's happening right now in Gaza. I know, Rachna, you mentioned some of the pockets that are important in Michigan. I would say another big pocket that's important in Michigan is the Arab and Muslim community, and broader than that are really uncommitted voters right now. And I know I myself have had these conversations, and I frankly have not had the best choice of words in many of these conversations, because at the end of the day, it feels a little hard and oftentimes a place where people just dig their heels in. If people have a second, Anurima just sent a really long and thoughtful post in the chat just to kind of take a quick second to read. And we welcome everyone to share your own experiences, because I don't think anyone can definitively say that they know what will work. This isn't one of those issues where anything one of us say can necessarily work. I think at the end of it, a lot of what we heard before from Susmik and from Ruhi about being empathetic, about being curious, is really what we just need to lead with, to show that, frankly, I don't think any of us don't want this war to end. And I think most of us likely want the administration to change course on its policies. But also, many of us are not just fighting for today, we're fighting for the future. And we recognize that progress takes time, and that incremental change will lead to that progress. So I'm just going to leave that, and acknowledge that Anurima sent a really lovely message, and if people want to share their own, they should. I hope all of you have been taking diligent notes for the last 2.5 hours. No, I'm just kidding. Or less than 2 hours, sorry. We will be sending an email with resources linking out to everything that was shared tonight. There was a lot of great information, frankly, much more than, and I thought I was in the know, but much more than even I was aware of. I want to also acknowledge that sometimes all of this information can feel like information overload. And the most important thing that you guys can all do in the next 9 weeks is just to start. Start with one thing, whatever that one thing is. It can be leaving today and joining one of those WhatsApp groups that were mentioned. It can be leaving this conversation and pinging one of your friends and saying that, I thought that was awesome. Or maybe you didn't think it was awesome, but hopefully you did. It can be following, the various organizations, IA Impact, South Asians for Harris, Postmark Salon, NCAAT, the many others that were mentioned on social media, and just quickly resharing the things that you're seeing posted. It's incredible what the power of social media can do in this moment. And we heard so many people from different generations, and the fact of the matter is people are getting their information from traditional media, social media, the mail, all across the board. And so with that said, I would like to wrap up tonight's call. I think if anyone here has any further questions, please reach out to any of us as organizers. And I think, we have 9 weeks to go. This is a great election to be part of, to wake up the day after the election and say that you did something. But it's also not going to be easy. And I think, as the great Tim Wall said, we'll sleep when we're dead. We have a lot of work to do. We got to get to it now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate all the speakers and all of you that have made time.
And I want to say one huge thank you to Sendal, which is Venu's husband, because we last minute needed someone to it really is just all of us scrambling to keep calls together. But
we have a Sendal hand in the frame. I think I was trying to get my mom to get over here so we could have some intergenerational frames, kids. And so it's as you can tell, like, this is all of us pitching in. So grateful to him and to everyone else.
You guys, we got this. 62 days.
9 weeks from today. That's it.
This is how we do it, right? Like, this is how we do it. which is to gather and to inspire and to move together.
And we're here. We have like you, we have many WhatsApp groups. Reach out, let us know. We're gonna Sendel also last time the women WhatsApp. Sendel also last time did a compilation of the resources from the chat. So he'll do that again and we'll send it out.
And we're gonna post an action guide in a second as well. So the link to the action guide, which you can actually just access and has all of the information.
It's in the Q&A too. I put it in the answers.
Yeah. A lot of folks also have asked us for policy guides. We don't have those yet, but we will when I don't want to, when we do get them, when we get them from the campaign. Anu, did you want to say something to that at all?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things. Just to go back to how Ruhi started, which is there's the policy guides, and then there's the ways in which so many of us are trying to have difficult conversations. Madhuvanti put in about the fact that people are still questioning whether the vice president's qualified, whether or not she should be in this position at all. And I think some of it is just this moment of we can certainly equip all of us with like the talking points and the policies, but some of this is feelings and not facts, right? And how do we actually engage in the feelings that people have about what direction this country needs to go in, and all those questions that you heard from young to older about how to, what matters, right? And so I will say, like, there's more to come on the policy end, but I do think part of this is how do we respond to, as Paul mentioned to me earlier today, like how do we respond to when we get someone negative in a WhatsApp chat or in a conversation, or saying, or really pushing us, and also how do we get out of the divides that so many people are trying to make wider, right? And so there's a big effort to make us pit us against each other, and it's on all of us to find the ways to come together and to realize that no matter which state we're in, no matter what community, and no matter who we're calling to, our values are ones that are aligned, and that's what this is about, and making sure that we build on those to build something different for the future. So it's this is how we do it. It's on we can put every slogan out here. It's on us. Like, let's go. But most of all, do something. And whatever that is, it's going to be magic, because you know the people in your life and how it is that we can move them.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Catch you on the flip side. Thank you.